Good afternoon, everybody in the UK, and good morning to those of you who are tuning in, if any of you are nice and early from across the pond. So welcome to Legal Content Chat. It's Wednesday, so it must be another episode. Pretty sure we're up to 29 or 30 by now. They're running away with me because I've done so many, but it's all good. So today we're going to be talking about how to retire and live your best life, basically. That's what it's all going to be. So I have got on a happily retired lawyer, Murray Gottheil, and he is in Canada today. So he's brought up really early, which I'm very grateful for because I know that the time difference doesn't always work out. So we're going to be discussing, it's not the fact that old lawyers should be talking about and thinking about retiring and how it's important to discuss it before you get anywhere near there. So Murray, please introduce yourself. That would be amazing.
Hi, thank you, Becky. I'm Murray Gottheil. I practiced law way too long and way too unhappily. And now I'm retired and life is much better.
Amazing. Thank you. Also, please let us know that you are here. Drop a little wave in the comment box and any questions that you've got for Murray that might come up. That would be awesome as well. So just drop them in there. So I've been reading lots of blogs on your website, Murray, because I love writing blogs and I also love reading blogs, especially if they are a little bit sarcastic and tongue-in-cheek, which yours definitely are, I would say. So and I quote you here, retirement is when you are doing exactly what you want to be doing. So I guess for you that involves living in the country and driving your pickup truck and entertaining people when you feel like it. Is that right?
Well, that's just about right. But I do have to correct you. My blogs aren't a little bit sarcastic. They're a lot sarcastic. So I'm going to have to go back and double down on that. Yes, I got that quote, retirement, when you're doing exactly what you want, from a so-called expert on retirement many years ago. You know the definition of an expert, somebody from out of town with PowerPoint. So I went to a presentation and this fellow, asked the audience, give me a definition of retirement. They said, it's when you stop working and wait to die. And he said, no, it's when you're doing exactly what you want to be doing. And that really resonated with me. So yes, I retired. I moved to the country. I bought that pickup truck. I'm pretending that I'm not a cityot. I don't know if you use that phrase in the UK, combination of city and idiot. Somebody from the city who moves to the country and still acts like a city person. So I try not to be a cityot. I retired just as the pandemic was starting. I needed something to do. So I started writing and started, doing the blog and writing on LinkedIn. And that became my entertainment, led into doing exactly what I want to do. A little teaching, a little mentoring, occasionally speaking, walking in the woods a lot, going in my canoe. It's a nice life. It really is. Though I do have 40 years of crazy to try to get over, because it seeps into your bones. I still wake up in the middle of the night having dreamt that I'm practicing, I'm drafting, I'm negotiating. And you wake up after all of that and you realize there's nobody to bill. It's really very disconcerting.
I can imagine. Sounds like you might need some trauma responses to work through there from all those years of being a lawyer.
Absolutely. I do think there's something like post-traumatic professional syndrome.
Maybe.
Really, really does affect you. I mean, I've been retired 4 years now, and I'm still dreaming about working on files. And it's not because I want to go back to it either. So
no, there's some deep stuff there for sure. So, and you get to travel a lot as well with your lovely wife, isn't that right?
Yes, my wife is very lovely. That's exactly right. And yes, we do travel. That was the idea for retirement, was I was finally going to get to do all the traveling I never got to do while I was working. So far, we've hit 2 very long cruises, 55 nights and 46 nights through the winter. Because if you're in Canada, come December, it's really pretty. The snow falls. It all looks nice. Come January, you want out. So we try to take some very long cruises, and they're interesting. The last one was supposed to end in Dubai, but they just took us to Cape Town and said, you're getting off here. So,
right. Okay. Yeah, that does sound
there's a war going on. You're not going to Dubai after all. Hope you like Cape Town. It was fun.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, it's a good job you are retired and you could just, carry on regardless, basically.
That is the idea. Here's the thing. Now, for the audience, Becky told me to be upbeat. This is going to be a little less upbeat for a second. You get to a certain age, and I am 69 and a half now. That's something you do when you get older. You bring back the half years that you used to use when you were a kid. So I'm 69 and a half. And you say to yourself, how long am I going to be healthy enough to do whatever I want? And time to do it now. Spend the money now. 60 to 70, you're good. 70 to 80 might hopefully you're good for a lot of it, but, it becomes problematic after a while. Now's the time. Now's the time to spend all that money that I had no time to spend because I was working 7 days a week.
Absolutely. So that kind of brings us nicely into planning for retirement, because you were saying to me that, it's not just older lawyers that should be planning. This should be something you're thinking about long before you retire. So what advice do you have, or what are your thoughts around planning for retirement?
Make friends. Keep friends. Right. Don't work so much that you lose all your old friends. You're going to get to retirement age and you need a sense of community, and you need to not be lonely. And if you've spent your whole life working with your head down and the only people you associate with are your work colleagues, you wake up one day and you realize, you know what, your work colleagues aren't interested in you after you've retired. Now, some might say maybe that's you, Murray. Maybe they didn't even like you while you were working. But I think, I hear this from a lot of people. You think these people are your friends, and the people you go to lunch with, you go out for drinks with, and you go to the pub and whatever. They're not. They're busy working. When you retire, they're still working all those crazy hours. So if you haven't done something to develop your interests and hobbies and have a picture of what you want to be doing the day after, you retire, then you get to retirement and it can be lonely. I know a number of people who, they've retired and they've become depressed. And I know other people who can't imagine retiring, not so much because they love what they do, but because they're terrified of what they're going to do with their time afterwards. So I think planning, when you talk about planning for retirement, I think everybody's mind goes to, putting away money. How much money do I need? How do I get to my number? But I really think the more important thing about planning to retire is, what am I going to do with my time that I'm going to love doing, and who am I going to do it with? And then if you want to get even a little more granular on it, look at your relationships. If you've spent the 30 years of working getting further and further away from your spouse because you haven't had time to work on your own relationships, all of a sudden it's just you and your significant other out on the island by yourselves. It is not going to take long to realize that they're cracks. So another thing you have to do your whole life is really pay attention to those relationships, because, as I said, just you and he and her on the island at a certain point, you better like being on the island together.
Yeah, that is fantastic advice. So do you see a lot of lawyers or did you work with a lot of lawyers that perhaps just were so busy working, had their heads down, basically, just didn't even have time to think about what their retirement might look like? I mean, I guess that is a common thing.
I think that's a lot of people, and there are a group of people for whom that's just fine. There's a very well-known lawyer. His name was Lorne. He was with a Buffalo law firm that had an office in Toronto, very well known internationally. He was very active in the international associations. I sat down with him when he was 85 years old. And I said, Lorne, why are you still working? He was still a partner in a law firm, though most of what he was doing was business promotion at that stage. And he said, Murray, I'm still working because if I stop working, I'll cease to be relevant. And he was delighted. He loved that life. Now, at 87, he died in the office. He collapsed in the office, and I'm told that while they were strapping him to the gurney, he was giving instructions on his files to his legal assistant. But the point is, he loved it. He wouldn't have had it any other way. And as far as I'm concerned, he was retired because he was doing exactly what he wanted to be doing. So, for some lawyers who want to work till they drop, all power to them. I think it's fantastic. But I see so many more who are working till they drop simply because they have no notion of what they do afterwards, and they're terrified of what's going to happen afterwards. Absolutely terrified. And hey, here I am speaking about planning for retirement, but if you ask me if I planned for retirement very well, I'd say not really, because I also worked way too hard. I mean, I had some plans and some ideas. My number one plan was to get out of Toronto and move to the country. So I did that. My number two plan was to buy the pickup truck, which I did. Although, if truth be known, it's not the most manly pickup truck there. It's sort of one of the smaller ones, but
Oh.
I found that out when I got to the country, and everybody had the big, massive pickups. Mine sometimes has an inferiority complex. So I try not to park it next to the larger ones. So it won't fit. I also had this great notion that I was going to do all this traveling, which I'm now doing. But I retired just as the pandemic set in.
Yeah.
So imagine my one big plan was to travel, and here I am sitting in the country where there's nothing to do. So I think you also have to be pretty flexible about your planning. Now, I have another friend who golfs in his retirement. That's what he does. Every single day he golfs. Well, in Canada, that's a hell of a plan up until about the end of October. And then it's not much of a plan at all. So he's literally delighted from June until October, but he's not very happy after that.
Yeah, he needs another hobby for the rest of the year, doesn't he?
He absolutely does. And it's interesting how if you've gone your whole life without developing these hobbies, they're difficult for some people to jump into. Other people are fantastic. Out in the country, I live with all these real men. I don't call myself a real man. I've got a toolbox, only has 3 tools in it. There's a phone, a checkbook, and a pen. That's how I get things fixed and built. Out in the country, there are all these guys with these massive, toolboxes and chainsaws, and some of them keep themselves busy just building stuff and fixing stuff, and they enjoy it. They love it. Yeah. So, it can be anything for anyone, but you do have to have some notion of what it is you're going to be doing.
Yes. So even though you didn't plan your retirement perhaps that well, do you think there are any specific signs when somebody is ready for retirement in the legal industry?
Yes. I think, well, for me, I knew I was ready for retirement because I woke up one day after having spent nearly 40 years really thinking and breathing my career. And, I was either working or I was on the phone on the way to the office, checking up on people, calling clients, telling them I still love them. And then one day I woke up and thought, I don't want to do this anymore. It just hit me, all of a sudden. So I think you don't realize, you're so deep into it, you don't realize that one day you're just not going to want to do it. I think the other signs are, I think as you get older, at least for me, it becomes harder to deal with the stress. It was one thing for a whole career to say, well, I'm under stress, but boy, am I a multitasker? I can do everything. And then get to a point in life where you say, the stress is really getting to me. It's not really as much fun as it used to be.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of subtle signs that you have to be open to. And I also think from a health perspective, I got away with sitting at a computer and staring at the screen for hours at a time, drafting documents. I got away with that for years, but you get a little older and, your back isn't putting up with that just as well as you. So I think a whole bunch of things come together and you realize you just don't want to, you just don't want to keep doing what you've been doing. So at least that's how it was for me anyway.
Yeah, that does make sense. So we can't really talk about lawyers and retirement, I don't think, without discussing burnout. Okay, so, and I'm going to give another quote, although this is from your late father. So the problem with life is that generally it does not end well. I like this quote quite a lot. So yeah, discuss.
That was one of my father's positive quotes, if you believe that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Another one of his quotes was about getting sick. He said, of course you have to get sick. Otherwise, what are you going to die from? So,
Right,
he was the most
logical.
He was the most upbeat guy in the world, my dad. Sorry, I've lost my train there.
All right, burnout. We're going to talk about burnout.
Life doesn't end well. Burnout. I think, I burned out a few times in my career, never so seriously that I, ended up taking a leave or being in the hospital. But seriously enough that I'd walk into a meeting and start a conversation and forget where I was going and not be able to finish the sentence. I mean, that happens to all of us, but it was happening to me 5 times in the same meeting. Luckily, I had this wonderful associate who could read my mind and pick up mid-sentence and continue. So I did have that, and I don't think it was the legal career that caused the burnout. It was personal stuff that was going on. But, you don't have a lot of bandwidth to handle the personal stuff when you're working as hard as a lot of lawyers work. It doesn't take a lot to knock you off your stride.
Make sure that you attend my next LinkedIn Live because I am going to be dropping a very special offer and it's only going to be available for LinkedIn Live attendees. So come and find me on LinkedIn and get on the action.
I think the difference between being burned out and knowing you want to retire, other than age, of course, because if you're getting burned out in your 40s, you're thinking you just, retirement isn't necessarily an option. I think the difference is when you're feeling burned out, it's sort of episodic. You come out of it and you're feeling better again. When you're at the point where it doesn't matter what you do, what vacation you take, your still thought process is, I've had enough of this. Then I think it's no longer about burnout. It's about just wanting out. I was always able to refresh myself through vacations. I'd work really hard, then I'd take a vacation. And then, the first week of vacation would be recovering from getting ready to leave on vacation. And then the next little bit of vacation would be having fun. And then the last 3 days or so would be dreading going back and what's going to be waiting for me on my desk. Mm-hmm. But when you come to the point where you can take vacation and you go back and you say, yeah, I don't really want to be doing this anymore. I think, it's time to get out. So
Yeah, I see. And in your experience, lawyers around you, did that happen often?
I don't really know. I was sort of one of the older people in my firm, so I was sort of hitting retirement sooner than some others. Yeah. I did see a few others who got out, and at the time I didn't get it. I thought, well, why would you leave? You're still young. You got years left to do, and boy, aren't you going to be bored? I really didn't get it when I saw one or two of them sort of leave earlier than me. One of the things I've noted about human nature, at least in my experience, is people don't get things until they've gone through them themselves. I tell this story about this lawyer we had who was just atrocious to a young mother and could not understand the time she had to spend with her baby and had zero tolerance and was really, really quite a jerk. And then he had twins. And we just laughed and laughed and laughed and said, I think he's going to get it now. But generally, I find that people don't really relate to things they haven't been through themselves yet.
Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, that's some good karma right there, isn't it? Having twins, that really is. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I like that a lot.
He actually said to one of our associates who was staying home with a baby who was sick and running a terrible fever, and she was up with the baby 24 hours and couldn't do a research project on time. And he said, well, I know you like to play. You'd prefer to be playing with your kid. When he had twins. Anyway, a little off topic, I suppose.
Yeah, but no, that's fine. Actually, this is a lovely segue because I know that you spend some time mentoring young lawyers and, being older than them and all that. Tell us about how that came about. And is this something you just do on an ad hoc basis? Is it you just get approached? How does that work?
Well, it's really quite interesting because when I retired and moved to the country, I moved to this tiny little hamlet in the country. And there isn't much to do there in the summer, though we are a bit of a tourist destination for people from Toronto. So, there's the lakes and canoes and stuff to do. In the winter, there's even less to do. And in the winter during a pandemic, there's nothing to do. So I was sitting there with nothing to do as the pandemic started. And I went on LinkedIn, discovered that my prior post had been 8 years earlier. There'd only been one. I suspect my marketing person put it up and I had nothing to do. So I'm reading LinkedIn. Everybody is honored and humbled for something or other. So I write this post that says, I'm honored and humbled to announce that I'm unemployed. I have won no prizes. I have no business and nothing to do. People started responding to that. And I realized, hey, this is going to be fun. So I built up a bit of a presence on LinkedIn and people started reaching out to me. They read my blogs and they started reaching out to me. I started doing a lot of Zoom chats and sort of just, there's always somebody calling me to discuss their career, or a few people call me to, talk about a legal problem they have. They get my disclaimer. I'm unlicensed. I'm uninsured. I give no legal advice. You're the professional, not me, but here's what I think. And I never tell your clients you spoke to me. So I give them my disclaimer. I offer a little help. Yes, there's always somebody calling, and I've spoken to people across Canada. I've spoken to people in the U.S. And one of the things I've learned is that the profession sucks everywhere. Everybody's unhappy all over the world. There's nothing different. So yes, the mentoring's
remember upbeat.
Yeah, yes, upbeat. Sorry, upbeat. So the mentoring's fun. I have a mentoring scale of fees, which says if you're new to the profession and have no money, it's free. If you're, not so new to the profession, it's $100 an hour. If you have lots and lots of money, it's $350 an hour. And if you have lots of money, but you're cheap, it's $200 an hour. And nobody pays me. I get paid by, just one or two people pay me money. The rest are just, I just do it and it's fun. And I have one young lady who has a difficult career and difficult family life. And I think she thinks I'm her dad now, but she calls me every night, tells me how her workday was. It would be really nice if she was paying me because I speak to her for hours every week.
That would be nice.
But you know what? It's fun. It's got me in contact with the younger generation. I have a sense of what the issues are for the younger folks, all the time. And it's developed those contacts I said, that you have to have. So, for example, next week, I have 40 people driving out to the country to come to a barbecue at my place. And they're all people I've just met electronically. I did it for the first time last year, and I had never met 90% of the people who showed up.
Wow. So you've just got 40 people coming over for a barbecue. Yeah, great.
We're going to do a barbecue. It's a great networking opportunity for them.
Yeah.
And for me, it's just, hey, I'm making younger friends. My mom is 96 in her mid 80s when her friends started departing this world. we told her, you need to make younger friends. So she went out and did that. She was in her mid-80s. She made friends with a lot of 70-year-olds. Now she's 96. She still has friends who can drive.
Yeah, handy, very handy.
It's, you know what? There's a tendency, I think, as we get older to stay within our own age group, so we all rail about those younger folks. It's very interesting to have an ongoing relationship with such a good number of people who are quite a bit younger than me, and, to hear and understand their concerns. And it's gratifying to be able to help them. So I actually really enjoy the mentoring.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned that it keeps you in touch with like current problems that are happening within the legal industry and concerns. So not completely on topic, but I'd be interested to know what you're seeing at the moment, what you're being, asked to advise on.
Well, for one thing, I find it interesting that, if I wasn't speaking to these people, I would not understand why some of them are driven more by money than I think they should be. I speak to people and I say, stop looking at earning the biggest dollars. Look at where you're going to get your best mentoring opportunities and your best, avenues for advancement. And I think that's still sound advice. But they look at me and say, Murray, it's $3,000 to rent an apartment in downtown Toronto. And you might think I'm making a good salary, but I'm barely getting by. So I understand some of their drive towards short-term remuneration instead of long-term career planning. I also understand some of some of the issues around, you talk about AI and looking at different areas of practice and what's going to disappear, and try to coach them toward areas which are still going to be around in a few years. The longer route to partnership, it used to be in my day, you'd be making partner at 7 years out. And now, I sort of see that it's being delayed by at least several years. I try to get a sense of, of the lack of loyalty that now exists between law firms and associates. Something that that was during my time as well, all of that developed. But to just understand why people jump so much in the profession and those type of things, it's just, I'm a little closer to being able to live their life than I would have been if I was just sitting back here thinking about how it used to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. So if anybody is watching this and thinking, you know what, I think I'd quite like this upbeat fella to mentor me, how do people get in touch with you? What's the best way?
If people would like to get in touch with me, just email me, go on my website, which is either murraygottheil.com or lawanddisorderInc.com. And find my email, my email address there, just send me a message. And people do it all the time. I get on a Zoom call. I talk to them. As I said, some of them pay me, some of them don't pay me. It's entirely up to them. I actually say to people, let's do a call. Don't worry about whether you're paying me or not. At the end of the call, if you add value and you can afford it, pay me. If you didn't get value or you can't afford it, don't pay me. I really don't care.
And that is an incredible way to be. And I think we should all aspire to be more Murray.
Well, oh, wow, that's wonderful. Can I get my wife in here? Can you repeat that to her? I don't know if she's by that. Be more Murray. I think the reality is, at least for me, I retired when I thought that I could scale my lifestyle down to, what it took to survive on what I've saved. Mm-hmm. So how am I, really advancing my life if I can get an extra, few $100s from somebody who can barely afford their rent because they're just starting off in the profession? It doesn't do anything for me at all. So it's just not that important at this stage. But it really is a mindset. So many people are always telling me, get your articles together in a book, try to make money from that. You can monetize all your posts, get them off LinkedIn, put them in somewhere where you can sell subscriptions. And my wife says that I don't do it because I have developed an aversion to making money. Okay?
Oh, interesting.
It's very interesting. She says, you don't mind making a few dollars here and there. She says, but you're worried that if you start making serious money, you're going to become the crazy person you were when you were practicing law. And you're afraid to do that. That's her theory, at least. Well, that's coupled with her theory that she likes me a lot more than she did before I retired. So apparently,
I think she's onto something there. I think, the aversion to money, that's an interesting one. But hey, you've made enough money to retire, you're happy days, right?
Yes. So let me segue into the whole thing about money. One of the things I've written about and I like to talk about is the number. People go around their whole career talking about what the number is that they have to reach in order to retire. And they never get to the number. I never could get to the number. It was just when I thought, okay, it's whatever number of $1 million they have to have in the bank to retire. I'd speak to one of my buddies and they were convinced the number was several million more than that. And, and you're crazy if you retire if you think you can retire on what you're thinking about. So I went along and my conclusion is that if you're focused on getting to the number in order to retire, you're never going to retire. It's never going to be enough. It's never going to be as much as your friends think they need to retire, etc. So eventually one day I woke up to the idea that the key isn't to hit a given number. It's to get to the number when you really want to retire, or get to where you really want to retire and scale your lifestyle down to that number. So for people in Toronto, that often means sell the overpriced house in Toronto. It's one of the most expensive places for housing. Short of London, I imagine, is worse. But sell that overpriced house, move to the country, buy a nicer house for half the price and invest the difference, right? But think about, what do you really need in retirement? I don't need a Jaguar in retirement. I really don't. I'm perfectly happy with my used pickup truck and my Honda Civic, and if that means I can travel and I don't have to work longer, that's great.
Yeah,
it really is important for people to get in touch with their views about money and what's important to them. Some people, it's really important to leave a lot of money to their kids. I hope my kids aren't watching. That isn't important to me. So you really do have to get to that. But for me, there's too much talk about money and investments and annuities and stuff when people talk retirement, and not enough talk about enjoying life and having community and not being lonely and relationships and things like that. I think that's what really matters.
Yeah, I love that. I think that is absolutely sound advice, and I'm sure our viewers can take away a lot from that. So thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you for getting up early as well, because I know being retired, getting up early is not high on your agenda. So
but on the other hand, when you get old, you can't sleep that well. So
yeah, I have heard this. Yeah, that sucks, right? When you get to the time when you don't have to get up, and then you get up anyway because your body wants to get up.
That's right. Well, thank you very much for having me.